Hola, it's Joe Pardavila. This is the Forbes Books Podcast, and surfing legend Garrett McNamara once said, "It really is never too late, it really is never too early to figure out your goals and dreams and what you love." And my guest this week didn't wait too long to accomplish their goals. They built an ETF, or an exchange-traded fund, while in high school. Their names are Julian and Eitan Prins-Trachtenberg, and it's not just any ETF. It's the first exchange-traded fund designed for Generation Z. It's called ZGEN, and it invests in companies that were born after the internet and whose use, values, disruptiveness, and innovativeness align with Gen Z. Julian, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. And Eitan, thanks for coming on to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me as well.
All right, Julian, let's start with you because I've spoken to a bunch of people that have gotten involved into Gen Z VC, venture capitalism. So my curiosity is, why an exchange fund? What drew you guys to that?
Yeah, sure. So, first, let me tell you a little bit about our mission. When we started ZGEN, we were, we wanted to provide an investment that was future focused, relatable, diversified, but most importantly, easily accessible for our generation, investment for our generation. And we thought that, by creating an ETF, it just made the investment so much more accessible to the largest range of people. So that's really why we did it.
And Eitan, for folks who are not totally into it, an exchange fund is basically, it's like a bucket of random, or not random, but I guess selected companies, right?
Yeah. So it's a fund that's easily tradable. So it trades on an exchange and it tracks a set of companies. Ours tracks 50 companies, and it makes it really easy to kind of get exposure to all those companies at once.
And Eitan, talk to me about these 50 companies. I don't expect you to name all of them, but is it a sliding scale? Do they come in and out of the fund? How does that work?
Okay, yeah. So the companies are meant to reflect the 50 companies that most align with Generation Z. As you would expect, the industries in our portfolio are very future focused. So we have quantum computing technology, democratized education, sustainable technology, metaverse technology, those really future focused industries. And in terms of, turnover and how companies go in and out of the portfolio, we don't have very much of it. We are, very future focused, and we intend on keeping most of our positions in the portfolio long term.
Julian, is this something that's pretty common that Gen Zers, me being the Gen X here, I can't relate with you guys, but do a lot of Gen Zers, are they into this? What made you think oh yeah, there's a lot of Gen Z who want to get into this kind of thing?
Well, I think the main thing was, it was over the last 2 years, I feel like that we've seen this massive explosion in interest from Gen Z in investing. And it was really, Eitan and I, we've been investing for a while as well. And when we look around the market, we couldn't find anything. We couldn't find any investments that were really, relatable to our generation. And I think our generation, and one of the outcomes, because our investments that are necessarily relatable, our generation really seems to gravitate towards these altcoins and meme stocks. And what we wanted to do was, we really wanted to try and educate our generation and get them to know that they should have a diversified portfolio. So, we believe that by creating this ETF, we're helping to diversify their portfolio.
And Eitan, how old are you?
I'm 17.
17. And Julian, how old are you?
18.
18. So it's safe to assume that you guys have not been to college or business school, right, Eitan?
True.
So where is all this knowledge coming from? Is this something you've accumulated over your short life? I'm just very curious as to how you got here.
Right. That's a great question. So, one of the things is, we have been trading for a while, but obviously, there's, years of sort of knowledge and experience that, we also needed. So one of our things that we did was we went out and we partnered with this ETF white labeling service company called ETF Architect. And basically what they do is they really help you with all the back-end components, with, compliance, with trade execution, et cetera. So they've really been helping us along this journey. But what that allowed us to do by partnering with them was to really be able to focus on, the messaging, spreading the word about, creating more investments that are relatable for Generation Z. And so we really get a focus on that. And then also just, the selection of the companies.
Mm-hmm. And Eitan, some of these companies you mentioned before, metaverse, it's become super hot. I don't want to upset people. I know the metaverse has been around for a while, but Facebook/Meta has sort of owned it to the mainstream people. So talk to me about what kind of investments are available in the metaverse.
Yeah, so I actually just read a really interesting article the other day that talked about kind of how Generation Z was switching its kind of view on different securities from being super interested in these volatile, meme coins, as Julian was talking about before, to now an interest in metaverse technologies like, we've seen NFTs or digital real estate, that type of thing. In terms of the companies that we have in our portfolio that align with the metaverse and its ideals, we do have Meta, we have Roblox, we have Unity Software, Coinbase, which I know isn't super metaverse, but it does facilitate trading cryptocurrency. So we definitely have exposure to the metaverse in that regard. But I think it's really interesting how Gen Z is kind of almost leading this transition to the metaverse.
Yeah, because Julian, as the aforementioned Gen Xer I am, when I hear about this, I grew up in a time where virtual reality was just the cheesiest piece of blank you could ever think of. It was just like, who wants to deal with this? And I know VR had sort of like that rise and crash, and I totally understand that metaverse and VR are completely different concepts there. But why do you see the metaverse as something that Gen Z is sort of embraced, and why is there a future there?
Yeah, I mean, I think, our entire generation, right, it's been sort of like, centric around like, just so much, just like hyper communication. We're constantly communicating with each other, and also really like, we're the first generation of digital natives. Since we were born, we've had these different technologies and these different, ways to communicate around the world. So, I mean, I think it really makes sense that our generation is sort of leading this transition into this just even more hyper connected world.
And Eitan, you mentioned NFTs. It's not as volatile as crypto, but again, it's one of those things where you're seeing like an NFT sell for like $3 million.
Right.
What kind of companies are part of the fund that are involved in NFTs?
So a lot of the companies right now, unfortunately, that are facilitating the transactions of NFTs are private. Mm-hmm. So we don't have a lot of exposure to NFTs specifically. But I think that, one of the things with the metaverse, one of the reasons that Gen Z so gravitated towards the metaverse is because, I mean, you talked about the rise and fall of VR, and I completely, remember those days. And I think the difference between standard VR and the metaverse is that VR was more of a kind of virtual reality entertainment, and it focused more on the entertainment aspect, whereas the metaverse focuses on all aspects of life, like work, social interaction, and, different things like that. And NFTs is a component of that, and that's why I was talking about them before. But we don't have exposure directly in our portfolio to NFTs.
And Julian, what's your take on crypto? Because speaking of volatility, we know that's pretty freaking volatile.
Yeah.
How does that play a part in your fund?
Yeah, so I mean, I think there's been a lot of interesting stuff going on recently where the SEC has recently kind of cleared the way for, allowing these different funds to start incorporating crypto into them. But, I really think we're at the very beginning of it. And so, we're very interested in crypto. And like we said, that's why we do have these different areas of exposure to crypto. And I think that, we're really looking, forward to being able to incorporate it into our own portfolio. So we're excited to do that. And also, I think one of the things that we really want to focus on is, also just the whole area surrounding blockchain technology. We really think that is a very prominent field that will lead the way for the metaverse, and just sort of our natural evolution of technology.
So, what's next for you guys? Where can this go? Is this like an initial ETF, and then maybe you grow to multiple ETFs, or adding more components to the ETF? Talk to me about the future plans.
Yeah, sure. So, I think for now we're really excited to kind of start, with just a Gen Z ETF, but we would love to expand, get into different ETFs, even doing different, potential funds in the crypto space. But I really think one of the things that we're really focusing on right now is the whole education aspect. We not only want to provide an investment that's relatable for our generation, but we also want to educate them on everything surrounding, finance, and, making sure that they have, a more financially secure future. That's really one of our mission, is increasing Gen Z's financial security. So, we've been trying to build up our social presence in order to, provide the sort of the Gen Z perspective and the sort of education content for our generation. And
Eitan, how did you fall in love with finance? Because you got to do what you love, right? So it's not like you're doing this because it's like, oh, this sounds like something cool to do. Where did this love come from?
Yeah, I mean, so that's a good question, and I think there wasn't necessarily one moment in my life that switched my perspective on investing and all that stuff. I think it was more gradually over the years. I've been investing for a really long time, and I always, just really loved it. I loved kind of the aspect of not only tracking different, percentages and allocations and using, math to make money, but also the fact that through trading, you get exposure to all these global ideas and all these global issues that companies are trying to solve. And in researching those, you also get exposure to, learning about the innovations that go into solving these problems. And I think that, finance as an industry really gives you exposure to so many cool aspects of the world. And that's why one of the reasons that I love it.
And how about you, Julian?
Yeah. So when I was younger, I was an actor. I was in eight feature films. And I think for me, it was like, I wanted something to do, I made this money from acting. And so one day, I just started investing it. And for me, I invested it because I really wanted to try and create a project, a company where that not only, made profit, but also that really, was there to kind of change the world and do something good. So it's really been this kind of journey from, acting to then investing the money to then, creating the Gen Z ETF. And it's really been this whole evolution for me.
And Julian, you were the Hollywood kid, and Eitan, you're sort of like the junior entrepreneur. You've got involved in entrepreneurship very young in life. What was it about being an entrepreneur at such an early age? Because I think didn't you win like an award developing like something for folks who are quadriplegic?
Yeah. So I've always loved, just creating things, getting my hands dirty, and building things that I think are cool and I think will make an impact. And the Generation Z ETF is one of these examples. But I've really from an early age just really enjoyed just kind of creating things because of all the different things that you learn through doing.
And what was it like? I know you guys were photographed at the NASDAQ. What was that feeling like, Julian, when this all became a reality for you guys?
I think it was great. It was really exciting. We've been working on this for quite a while now. So, to actually be there and to actually launch the fund was a pretty incredible experience.
And how about for you, Eitan?
Yeah, I have to agree. Stepping onto the NASDAQ floor was really just super unique and something that I could never have imagined doing if you told me I was going to be there a couple years ago. And I'm just really humbled and grateful to have the opportunity to do that.
I also think it's funny, like, when you go on to NASDAQ and you're walking down, like, when there's this hallway, they're leading you down, and it's like, oh, there's Bezos, Bill Gates, Microsoft's launching. It's just like all of these people that have been here before. And it was really funny. Right after we IPO'd, it was this giant thing, it was Elon Musk became, I think, Time Person of the Year or something. So it was this like giant thing of Elon Musk and like the Time people coming out doing this. And so it was just kind of like, it was all this sort of crazy stuff, that goes on there. And so, it was a really crazy experience.
And Julian, what do people on the street say about this? Like, you couple of guys, not even, you guys can't even buy a drink, but you've created an ETF. Have you heard from folks in the industry and be like, are they like, what's going on here? Or are they sort of like, oh, that's awesome that you're doing that?
Yeah, I think like with everything, it's a bit of a mix. We've gotten some, really great feedback. I think one of the most interesting things that we've been able to do is really get in contact, which I was not expecting, was we've begun reaching out to companies because, part of our whole, our social presence and trying to grow, the education content is, interviewing the companies in our portfolio. And what I think's been most remarkable is that we've been able to get in contact with a couple of these, very, very large companies, and, they've agreed to let us interview them. And I really think that is very cool. And it's not something that we were expecting. What's unique about us is that we're providing this, this view, this Gen Z view which really, it's just not in the market. It's not in the market right now. So I think, people are really interested and excited about it.
And Eitan, this is a question I guess I've never had to ask before, but how old do you have to be to buy into your fund? Is there some sort of legal limit or something like that?
Yeah, so if you're over 18, you can legally trade securities, but if you're under 18, you can do so under a custodial account. Okay. So your parents will have control over the account, but you can make the trades at your own discretion.
And so, Eitan, are you guys going to school while running this ETF? Talk to me about the dynamic of what you guys are doing with your life right now.
Yeah, so I go to school, but at the same time, the ETF is definitely a priority of mine. So I always make sure to, because, obviously managing a portfolio of this size is a massive responsibility. And Julian and I both understand that responsibility and take it very seriously. So while we do attend school, we spend a massive amounts of time outside of school working on the ETF and making sure everything is great.
So, Julian, how does your side gig compare to the other kids in your school? Is anyone else running an ETF that I'm not aware of in your high school?
That would be a no. But I'd like to say I'm homeschooled, so that's also what's really been allowed me to do this. Is I've been homeschooled since I was 7 years old, so it really gives me the flexibility to be able to run the ETF. So yeah, I mean it's been great.
And Julian, we mentioned the fact that you acted in your early days, although it's not. I mean, you're in your teens, so it's it's not that far away. But yeah. Do you think that sort of world of Hollywood and acting and the rough and tumble and the backbiting and everything like that, has that sort of created this sort of thick skin to get you ready for this world that you've gotten involved with? Because as you probably know, the world of finance could be just as ruthless as the world of Hollywood.
Yeah, I mean, I would think that I would say as brutal as the whole Hollywood industry is, finance is definitely takes it to kind of a different level. But I mean, I would say it definitely does. I mean, you go into auditions, etc. You get rejected 1,000 times. You really do have to have a thick skin. I think it has helped prepare me to take on something like this, because I have been working professionally since I was 7. So it's really been I think acting really prepared me to do something like this.
And Eitan, your friends, your family, I mean, I guess since you've sort of had this bug at such an early age, do they just feel like, oh, okay, cool, Eitan's running an ETF? Like they feel like this is just another day for you?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's what it feels like. My friends aren't groveling at my feet or anything like that. They don't really pay much attention to the ETF. My parents are proud of me, but again, they think it's. I mean, I wouldn't say normal, but they're not.
They're not shocked by it, I don't think, right?
Yeah, they're not like super shocked, but they are very proud and they are very supportive of me.
And Julian, talk to me about how things are growing. When did it hit the NASDAQ? Was it just a few weeks ago? When was that?
Yeah, it was December 16th.
December 16th. So talk to me about, we're recording this on January 26th, so a little more than a month and a half. Talk to me how it started and how's it going?
Fortunately, it's been a bit of a rough time in the market. I think all around, with the combination of Omicron, the whole thing that's going on in Russia. Everything in the market's been kind of suffering. But I think one of the things that was really amazing was we weren't expecting. We knew that we already had some money that we know was going to go into the fund that we'd solicited from different investors. But we outperformed what we were expecting to raise. So it's really, that's been great.
Eitan, in terms of this, Julian was just talking about how crazy the market's been lately. Are you guys sort of prepared for that? Because in a lot of these companies, they're future focused companies. If you guys are not old enough to remember, but the .com bubble of the 2000s, it wasn't too long ago, but it was pretty fast and swift. I forgot what the stat was. I think Silicon Valley went from like 500 companies to like 50 companies in like the span of a year. So how does the volatility and the fact that you're involved in these sort of edgy, sort of futuristic companies play into the fact that who knows what's going to happen on the market?
Yeah, I mean that's a good question. I think that a lot of investors expect a smooth exponential rise in gains, but Julian and I know that when there's upturns in the market, there's downturns in the market, and sometimes you just have to clench your jaw and get through it, because that's just an aspect of investing. That's just something that as an investor you have to deal with, and we're prepared to deal with it, and we know that it's a long-term fund. It's future focused. It's the horizon of investing is decades. So we're not too worried about this downtrend.
Julian, is there somewhere in the future where you start to shuffle companies in and out of this fund, where you're like, okay, this company's not performing to where we want it to be? Does the fund give you that flexibility from your end?
Yeah, absolutely. So the way that we're structured is, we review the portfolio monthly. So, within our sort of month time frame, we're constantly looking at companies, seeing what they're up to, making sure that they still sort of fit the morals and sort of, financial status that is acceptable for our fund. So, we're constantly reviewing companies, and we're, adding new companies if new companies IPO, and we're taking out companies if they fall below certain quotas for the fund. But I really think the main thing is we're not trying to be like, an active managed fund where we're, trading companies weekly, daily, etc. Right. We're really trying to focus on the long term, because for us, it's like, we view our portfolio as something that like, the companies that are relevant to Gen Z, but also the companies that are going to experience the most growth from Gen Z's sort of, rise. Because, we're the largest generation. We have, 2.5 billion members. In less than a decade, we're going to be the highest earning generation with $40 trillion annually. And so I think like, the companies that we're really trying to find the companies that will experience the most growth in Gen Z's sort of rise. So that's kind of a priority for us.
And Eitan, speaking of those companies, the 50 that you start out with, how was that process? I mean, I can imagine there were a few that were obvious choices, like I'm sure like the Snapchats of the world, but how was it to distill that list down to get that number that you got when you launched the fund?
Yeah, so we started out with every company that trades on a U.S. exchange.
That's a lot.
It's a lot. It's a lot. We did narrow it down because we do not allow companies in the fund that IPO'd before January 1st of 1997 because that's the cutoff date for Generation Z.
Okay.
And then there is an average daily value traded filter that we put on as well as a volatility filter. So I shouldn't say all the companies that trade on U.S. exchanges, but all the companies with those filters. And so we then go through each one of them and we assign a what's called a Gen Z score. So that basically calculates how much a company aligns with Generation Z, how much does Generation Z use this company, and how much do they like using this company. If a company receives above a certain score on that metric, they go to basically the next round. And then we rank them on everything from disruption, innovation, social values, diversity, different metrics like that to then narrow down to the 50 that end up making the fund.
Got it. And Julian, this is obviously all data driven. How much of gut has played in a part of that decision of those 50? Is it all data driven, or were there a couple that you and Eitan were like, man, this one it doesn't fit the bill right now, but it could?
I think most of it was, when we look at the companies, and it was largely data driven. I think that there are certain companies that we really kind of believe in their future, and so we kind of make this distinction within our portfolio. We have our sort of like our because it's 50 companies, right? So we have our top 40 and our bottom 10, and our bottom 10 are really companies that are really cutting edge, really bleeding nose in terms of technology. But at the end of the day, it's all about just sort of what aligns with Gen Z and what companies will experience the most growth from Gen Z.
It's safe to assume that Eitan, not only Gen Z can buy into this fund, correct? Everyone can, no matter what age.
Right, everyone can buy into the fund, and while we are called the Generation Z ETF. I definitely see an opportunity for older generations to buy into the fund, maybe for, their kid or grandkid, or because they want to hop on kind of the bandwagon of Generation Z's rise. And I think that that's another opportunity for us and for older investors as well.
We really think that we have these really two very unique and great markets. Like we obviously have the Gen Zers, which is amazing, but also in terms of a little bit what Eitan was talking about, the older generations, right? Like, what we're trying to do is we're trying to provide an investment that also, morally aligns with Generation Z. So if grandparents or parents want to put some money down for their kids, they can know that their kids would be proud of the investment that they made because it aligns with their grandkids or kids, morals.
Got it. And on a personal front, how active are you guys outside of this fund? Like, are you guys personally into crypto, NFT? Start with you, Eitan. Are you into anything else in these other sort of like breakthrough verticals that are coming out?
Yeah, I've been doing a lot of research in like the NFT and crypto space. I haven't gone full in. I don't own any NFTs or anything like that. But it is really, really interesting, and I'm keeping my eye on it a lot because I think that over the next kind of year, there's a lot of buzz around NFTs, and we've heard about DAOs as well, and different things in that space. So I'm definitely keeping an eye on them.
How about you, Julian?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think it's all very, very interesting, what's going on right now. But it's like, for us, it's really, it's just really focusing on the ETF because it does take, a lot of time. So for me personally, I haven't been as active on, my own personal side of investing, really just more focusing on, the ETF.
I mean, hey, you're only young once, Julian. What are you waiting for? Jeez.
Yeah.
And so as we wrap this up, Eitan, the future of this is a Gen Z fund, but, obviously you want this to last for a long, long time. What does that mean to you? Like, is the Gen Z fund going to be traded on NASDAQ for the next 100 years?
Yeah, so we kind of see the Generation Z ETF as sort of the S&P 500 of our generation, of Generation Z. As Julian said, its aim is to track the companies that align most with Generation Z in order to capture on the growth of Generation Z as a whole. And Generation Z will continue growing for at least the next 4 decades. And so we see that as the time frame for the ETF.
I think if you look at the different, very large funds out there, I think the S&P, began in like 1957 or something. Something like that. QQQ was like 1985. So really for us, it almost seems like, each generation kind of has their own fund, and we really view it as like time that, Gen Z gets their own fund. So that's really what we're trying to, provide.
Cool. And Julian, for a Gen Z that would listen to this or probably sees you guys doing interviews on your social media, and they're like, man, this seems like work, or I don't know what how do you talk to folks who are not into, because I'll give you an example. So when I was working in a radio show a few years ago, this millennial guy just started working with us, and he runs into the studio all pissed off, and he goes, "Can you believe what the business office did? They enrolled me in this thing called a 401k. They're taking money out of my check. I want my money now." And so this is a millennial. He's probably in his mid-20s at the time. And so he didn't understand the value of 401k. So how do you talk to your generation and express the importance of the CTF?
Yeah, that's a pretty funny story. So I mean, I think, that's really where I think social media plays the key. If you want to connect with the generation, you have to be where they are, and you have to, produce, because financial content, like, a lot of the financial content that's out there, it's just really, you can't really connect with it. If you're in our generation, but we really believe that because we are Gen Zers, we'll be able to best speak to what our generation would be interested in, and sort of how to best structure, information. And we also think that Gen Z is unique because, they really seem to be, quite interested in their future and sort of, becoming more financially secure.
Yeah, it's funny about that, Eitan. I feel like your generation is more, I guess, I don't want to say you're socially conscious, but I feel like you're more money driven because I think you know more about money than anyone else did. I grew up in a generation where you're like, don't talk about money. Don't ask anybody about money. Now everybody knows how much everyone is making. There's no secrets. And you guys know this full well as being running this company now. So do you feel like that's something with Gen Z who's like, hey, we know the value of money and what we could do with it?
Yeah, I definitely think that's a driving factor. I think, obviously with the rise of the internet and stuff like that, and people being so open and you're right, this change in mentality about the kind of taboo of money. Generation Z is definitely the most financially literate at this age relative to other generations were at this age. And I think that kind of what we're trying to do is sustain that financial literacy and grow it as Generation Z becomes older, because there's massive potential there.
And Julian, I mean, you guys are so advanced in finance. What is the next generation after Gen Z? Are they going to be trading NFTs like in pre-K? Like everything seems like it's moving so fast.
Yeah, I mean, I think Gen Alpha, right? I think born after 2012. I think, you never know, because I think one of the things with Gen Z that's also unique is like technology and innovation just happens so quickly, and everything just happens really quickly with our generation. So, I think it's just going to continue to get, more and more so for the next generation, the one after that.
Cool. They're Julian Feder and Eitan Prins-Trachtenberg. They are the founders of the Generation Z ETF. Julian, thank you so much for the time. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Eitan, thank you, sir.
Thank you for your time.
You're welcome, guys. And that's it for this edition of the Forbes Books Podcast. If you enjoy the show, make sure you take a second to subscribe so you automatically get my new shows when they drop. Also, if you have 1 minute, I would love if you left us a review so more amazing entrepreneurs like yourself can discover the show. And please don't forget the golden rule and treat others as you want to be treated. Thanks for listening. Until next time, adios.